Sorry, what? Fuck.
I mean, it's fine. I don't have to do it today. Tomorrow,
No. Sorry, I'm responding to something. I'm also about to be on a call. I meant to tell you that I think this is a bad week for it. I need to check in with her about section under training stuff, and so maybe next week.
Yeah.
Cool. Hello.
Hey everyone.
Hey.
I love seeing folks' faces, but if for whatever reason you want to have your camera off, that's okay. Just wanted to put that out there.
Sure, mind you see, I made you the co-host. So
Cool.
you should be able to present and everything.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. I won't do that. We're still waiting on a couple more people, right? Isabel and
Gima.
Chima. Yeah. Okay.
And I think Jackie is going to join.
Cool.
Okay. Someone named Lily.
Oh yeah, yeah. They are available.
Oh, cool.
Hello. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
So I think we're just.
And just a heads up to everybody, this is going to be recorded. So if you don't want your face to be seen, you can turn off your video.
Give folks just a couple, maybe 2 more minutes, and then we can get started. Jason, do you want me to DM Jackie to make sure that she's coming?
No, I would say if everyone else is here, let's go ahead and get started, and I will Slack her just to check in.
Yeah. I don't think I see, I don't know if it's my Zoom, but I don't think I see Isabel.
Is it? Oh, wait, here we go. Here's Jackie.
Jackie, yeah.
Isabel might not be able to make it. Let me see.
That's okay. I mean, if it is going to be recorded, so we could also just send this to them.
Right.
Okay, well, I guess we can get started. Yeah, and then we can clue folks in if they need to show up late for whatever reason. Okay, hello everyone. Thanks so much for being able to make it. Again, if for whatever reason you do not want to have your camera on, that's totally okay. Feel free to turn it off. I like seeing people's faces, but like we all have stuff, so feel free to turn it off if you do not want it. Jason also mentioned that this training is going to be recorded so that, you know, if we want to use it in the future, we can do that. So just wanted to give you a heads up that that is happening as well. So hi, my name is Charmaine. I am the director of fact-checking for Southside Weekly, and I'm super stoked for this training because I think fact-checking is super important. And I think it's really important that, you know, section editors, new sort of like fact checkers get a sense of why it's important and how we do it here at the Weekly. So here is kind of our agenda. The meeting or the training is scheduled for an hour and a half. It probably will not take that long, but I wanted to leave ample time for questions because there are usually quite a few questions at the end. So to start, I think it would be really great if we could just do names and pronouns so that we all get a sense of who we are. So I can start. My name is Charmaine. I use she and her. I will popcorn it to Jason.
Yeah, Jason Schumer, Managing Director, Southside Weekly, he, him, his pronouns. I'll popcorn it to Jackie.
Hey everyone, my name is Jackie Serrato. I'm the editor-in-chief of Southside Weekly, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. And I'll popcorn it to Malik.
Hey y'all, I'm Malik. I'm the section editor for housing and development, and my pronouns are he, him, his. I'll popcorn it to Shima.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chima. My pronouns are she, they. I'm section editor for the community building beat.
Oh, would you mind?
Sorry,
passing-
popcorn to Alma.
Thanks.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alma. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the immigration editor for the Southside Weekly. I'll popcorn it to Maddie.
Hi, I'm Maddie. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the education editor.
Oh, Maddie, would you mind passing it to someone else?
Lily.
Hi, I'm Lily. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm new to being involved with the Weekly.
Yay. I think, did we get everyone? I think we did. Solid. Well, thanks everyone for introducing yourselves. Again, I'm super stoked that we are going to talk about fact checks. So I'm going to start with talking about where fact checks fit in the production flow. This is super useful for editors to know and for folks doing the fact checking work. So some of you might already be aware, but as sort of a refresher, the Weekly puts out a new print issue every other week. So for example, we have production weekend / production night this coming Monday. And then we'll take sort of like a break. We're not going to print the following week, but we are going to print the week after that. Some articles do go online first, so fact checking can look a little bit different for online first articles, just in the sense of like the timing. But the busiest days for fact check are usually Saturday through Monday, because that's when editors get their stories or their writer stories to me, and then I assign them to fact checkers. This again might seem really familiar to some of you, but the way that I understand the flow is that writers will work with their primary editor for some amount of time, really depending on the story. And then once the primary editor finishes first edits and they go back and forth with the writer, and then the draft is ready for seconds, that is when the draft also goes to fact check. So at the weekly, there are 3 rounds of edits. And so it's really like the fact check happens at the same time as the second round of edits, so that there's like sort of minimal change for that 3rd round. And then after thirds are complete, the draft is sent to place. Do folks have questions so far about like when or where fact checking sort of fits into the grand scheme of things? No? Cool. Oh, I see something in the chat. Hi, Martha. Martha, do you want to introduce yourself real quick? Just name, pronouns, and what you do with the weekly?
My name is Martha Bain. I use my pronouns are she, her, and I'm the managing editor at the weekly. Means I manage the editors.
Thanks, Martha.
Okay.
So I'm sorry
I'm late.
It's all good. We were just going over where fact checking fits in generally, and it's that fact checks happen about the same time that the draft is ready for second edits. So something that I want to flag for the editors that you might already know, but hopefully if you're a section editor, or your primary editor for a certain story, that you and the writer have been communicating about fact-checking materials. This is very critical. I cannot overstate how important this is, because it just makes the fact checkers' lives a lot easier if there is a stash of materials in a folder in the drive that the fact checker can then access. Things like, and we'll go over this in a second, but things like transcripts or audio, video, photos. If the story is on a book review, PDFs or like a link to the book would be great. Anything that would allow the fact checker to verify facts in the story. So more on that to come. For fact checkers, there are a couple of ways that you can claim assignments. One of the most common ones is through our Slack channel. So Lily, I know that you're new to the weekly, super excited to have you here. One thing that I'm going to do at the end of this training is to send you an invite to our Slack channel if you're not already on it, just so that like you can keep up to date with what's going on in the fact check world. So I'm on Slack all the time, always, and it's probably not great, but that is like the fastest way to reach me, and that's the fastest way to pick up an assignment. I also, hold on, let me pull up the chat. Great, thanks. I also send out an Airtable form that I'm going to show you now. So it looks like this. So this is a form that you can use to tell me sort of like proactively when you're available, and if there's a particular story that you're interested in. So for example, if I wanted to claim a story, I would type in my name. I would look at the stories that are going to be that basically need fact checks, and these are usually the stories that are scheduled for the next issue. So for example, this week we need all of our fact checks done by Monday night. So that's their deadline, and I'll go over this later as well. But when I assign a story for fact check, I communicate with a fact checker how many words the story is. So if it's like, you know, so the fact checker can gauge how much time they'll think it'll take, who the writer and the primary editor are and their contact information, and then the deadline. Again, like because of our sort of like production flow, most of the time deadline for print stuff is Monday night. So for example, I wanted to fact check my own story, which is not usually a thing. That's not a thing that happens. So I would put down, you know, I'm interested in this story. I'm also interested in fact checking the calendar. And then I could write in, you know, when I'm available for this fact check, I could do, you know, all day Saturday and like Monday afternoon. So that's, you know, like how a fact checker would fill out this form. And I send this out through Slack and email. So yeah, this link is like very available, but if for whatever reason, you know, like you aren't sure of your availability or like you can't sort of plan that far out ahead, just check the Slack channel to see like if there's a story that's available and you can pick up an assignment that way too. The last way to claim an assignment is through email. So there are a couple of fact checkers who don't want to be on Slack, and that's totally understandable. So if you would prefer to communicate via email, please let me know. Otherwise, I do work on the assumption that people are on Slack and like check Slack. So if for whatever reason you prefer, like strongly prefer to communicate by email, let me know and I will honor that. Any questions about claiming assignments? I don't see any questions in the chat. We can always come back to this later. So that's how to claim assignments. Great, now we get to the fun part about like what counts as a fact. And here is the short and sweet answer. The fact is anything that can be wrong. And we try really, really, really hard at the weekly to make sure that the stories that we put out are, to the best of our knowledge, not wrong. So let's talk about what like some specific examples. So a common one is just names. So that could be, it's often spelling. It's small, but it really matters. Like I once did, I'm not gonna mention the name of the, anyway, I did an interview with a newsroom and they got my name wrong. Like they misspelled it. And it felt like a slight, like it did, I know they didn't mean anything by it, but it's not great to see your name spelled wrong in a publication. So really important to check the spellings of names for people and for places, and like even things like street names, avenue versus street. Like you might think it's small, but there is nothing too small for fact checking. This is something that I've told other folks in previous trainings, like this is the time to be nitpicky. Like it is so much better to be nitpicky and overly like detail oriented than to just be like, yeah, that's fine. Way better to flag it and be like, I'm not, you might want to think about this. So dates are also a really easy thing that can get wrong. So for example, in a story, I think that we did a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, there was a date that the writer said like a particular press conference at the mayor's office happened. And when I was fact checking it, I noticed that other newsrooms had also like mentioned this date. Like it was multiple times, like May 16, May 16, May 16. Like this is when all the newsrooms said that this press conference happened. But for the life of me, I could not find that date on any of like the city like websites, like the city's sort of like live stream links. And I found out that the conference had actually happened May 15. And I don't know what went, like, I don't know how like a bunch of other like publications started. I think what might have happened is that one publication said May 16, and then everyone else was using that publication to fact check their own work. And then it sort of trickled down. But that's a very easy thing to get wrong. So you want to be sort of mindful of that. Yep, Martha, that's right. It does happen all the time. And it's like, we try our best, and, if we don't catch it, it happens, but we really want to catch things like that because they matter. Quotes are sort of like a tricky thing to fact check, and I'll talk about that in a second. But essentially with quotes, you want to check, one, that a person said the thing, that they actually said the thing in the quotes, and to the best of your ability, check that the thing that they said is actually true. I'm sure that we can think of many, many examples from like the prior presidential administration of when people would say things, and sure, like they might have said them, but the things that they said were factually incorrect. So quotes are a little bit more work to fact check, but again, super important that we do that. And then finally, this is not finally, but like a big example are numbers. So if there's an age, you want to fact check that as best as you can. Any data points, you'll want to verify them against like a spreadsheet or some other sort of database where you can like look at a number and make sure that that's correct. Any questions about this so far? We'll go over like how to verify facts in a second, but like any sort of general questions about what counts as a fact? I don't see questions, so I'm going to move on. Again, like we can come back to questions later. Yes, this is correct. So I mentioned this earlier, but it's really important for the writers and the editors to work together to compile like a list of not a list, but like a repository of fact-checking materials. So these can be things like audio recordings, transcripts, photos, and videos, especially if someone is describing a scene. So for example, last summer and even this spring, we had several stories where reporters were on the ground sort of describing scenes of protest, scenes of like grieving. And while like I like to trust reporters and be like, yeah, like I'm sure that they're telling the truth about what they saw, but it's really important that they have like some like photo or video evidence that we can just like check. Super important to just like check, especially on stories that might be like perceived as more sensitive. Spreadsheets and code, I can talk about that like in more detail. Generally, that's not a thing that we use super often, but like in more data heavy stories, if the writer doesn't provide like a spreadsheet or something that allows a fact checker to do their work, like that's not great. So I wanted to throw that in there. And then finally, what some writers do, which I think is amazing, is embed links in their story. So if they are referencing a press release that the mayor put out a couple of days ago, some writers will like embed that link in the actual story. So that's something that you can use to fact check. You also want to use other sources, other original sources when possible, to fact check things. So like, yes, go to other newsrooms and like look at their coverage and just sort of like follow links, like if there's a link to another story. Okay, so let me try to give another example. So let's say an author or a writer embeds a link to a block club story, and that block club story links to, I don't know, like the mayor's office press release, and the mayor's office press release links back to something on the Chicago data portal. You want to verify it with the Chicago data portal. Like you want to go as far back as you possibly can. Given time constraints, sometimes it's not possible, but like, again, like the best you can, you want to go as close to the original source as possible. And then there are like government databases that I can talk about in a little bit too, that you can use to verify information. So now we're going to work through some examples. We're going to work through one sort of together, just kind of talk through like what questions you have. And then we'll do sort of like a split group example where I actually give you a story that we published about a year ago, and you will like work through it as a fact checker would. That sound good? I can't see you, but I'm going to assume that people have thumbs up. Okay, so here is an example of a statement that you might see in a story. It says the U.S. prison system does not provide adequate health care. Where do you start? Like what? Okay, so how do we start with this? What facts do you see, or what could possibly be wrong with this statement?
It's stated, I guess maybe it's not clear that it's like an opinion, even though it's like an opinion that can be backed by like examples. It's phrased in a way that makes it seem like this is like I'm trying to think of the word that it is, but like that it's like 100% a fact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Or like what questions do folks have about this statement? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so does not is like a thing that you'll have to check, like, does it provide adequate healthcare? What else? Does anyone know what the US prison system means? Like what is that? I'm gonna guess based on the silence that this is just a confusing statement, and it is. It is a very difficult statement to fact check because it's not clear who, like what the US prison system refers to, right? So I have in my notes here, it could be federal, state, county, ICE, like what system is this? So for example, if the writer had instead like federal prisons do not provide adequate healthcare, that could be like maybe a little bit easier to fact check. So something that you might note in your response to the writer, and I'll talk about like what that sort of back and forth can look like. You might say like, it's not clear to me what this phrase refers to. And so it's like very difficult for me to verify this sentence. The time frame, like does not provide is like, does it still not provide? Did it ever provide adequate health care? It's not super clear. The word adequate, like what does that mean? What does it mean to provide adequate health care? Is there some sort of like threshold or benchmark that we can use to say like whether it's adequate or not? And then healthcare, like who? Like healthcare for whom? These are not things that you as in fact checkers have to respond to, but I want to flag them as like ways that a sentence can be tricky to verify. So yeah, these sort of like statements come up sometimes, and your best bet is to like talk to the primary editor or like flag it in your fact checking copy and say like, this is kind of difficult to verify for these reasons. But yeah, I wanted to flag this because sometimes fact checks are really tricky. Like it's even for me, like I'm like, I don't know where to start with this. This is hard. Are there questions about this example? I promise the next example we go through will be like a little bit more straightforward. I don't see questions. Okay, so what we're going to do now is, sorry, I'm gonna try to move my Zoom camera, is, oops, we're not doing that. We're gonna work through a story that we published about a year ago. Let me move it down a little. Folks can still see my screen, right? Cool. Let me try to make this a little bit bigger. I don't know if this is doing anything. Oh, there we go. Can folks see? Folks can still see? Great. Okay, so this is kind of what fact checkers will get. Usually at the top, it'll say like fact check copy. And the reason why it'll say that is just because we want to make sure that the fact checking process is separate from the editing process. We don't want those things to overlap. So if you as a fact checker are ever in the same document as the primary editor, please like flag that for me, for them, and be like, help, I don't think I'm in the right document, because we don't want that to happen. So this is a relatively short, let me see the word count, about 300 words. This is definitely on the shorter side. Typically stories run anywhere between like 500 and 3,000 words. So this is on the shorter side, but this is an example of a story that you could get. I will send basically the list of steps after this training, but the first step when you are assigned a story to fact check is to just read the story. Again, sometimes there are time constraints, and if it's a long story, you might not feel like, oh my gosh, I don't have the time to read through it. But like even skimming through a story will help give you a sense of what it is that you will need to fact check, or if there are specific parts that you think are going to be trickier to fact check. Skimming for me like really helps, even though sometimes I am tempted to not skim and just start fact checking right away. So first step, just skim the piece, try to get a sense of what it's about, how many interviews there are, who the main characters are. And that will really help you sort of do your fact check. The second step is to then highlight. So the weekly has a highlighting system for fact check, where anything that counts as a fact, you just highlight in a certain color. Some people use yellow, some people use orange. I like using orange. So for example, if I work through just this first sentence, the 2020 census, that is a proper noun. That's a name for something. I'm going to highlight that. Kicks off when? On April 1st. For most Chicagoans, I'm not going to highlight this in a separate color, but this is something that I'm just going to like keep in mind. So what I'm going to do is, oh, you can't see that. That's not helpful. There we go. I'm going to write most. That's a question I have, and that's going to be, something that might be tricky to fact check. State, county, and city groups. So can I find examples of a state group, of a county group, and of a city group that have been doing what? That have been raising awareness about what? About the importance of participation for some time. What does it mean for some time? Like, what is that? So I'm going to highlight this and just say, these are more like notes to myself for some time. Specifics. Anxious to avoid an undercount. That is something that I'll try to fact check, although that might be a little bit more difficult. That could result in a projected loss of $1.2 billion in federal funding. Okay, so here's a number. It's a big number. It's in the billions. And I don't know about you all, but like personally, anything in the billions is hard for me to fathom. So it's really important that we get this number correct. And look, like this is just the first sentence and almost everything is highlighted. So I wanted to work through that because fact checking is very time intensive. Like oftentimes fact checkers are, working through like 80% of the words in the story. So I want to flag that like fact checking is not easy and it takes some time. So these are all the things that could possibly be wrong. And, if I wanted to show you sort of like the finished project of like highlighting everything that could possibly be wrong, it might look something like, so this one, this. here we go. So here in this example, it's in yellow. I think the previous, director of fact checking sort of did this example, but you can see that most of it is highlighted, right? So these are all the things that fact checkers will need to verify. And so once the fact checker has skimmed, like the first step is skimming the piece, second step is highlighting. The third step is then to go and verify each of the highlighted things. So the way that that would work is if you have interviews, you would go to a transcript or writer's notes. So I think for this example, we have writer's notes. Let me pull that up. And it's always better, and I mean, Jackie and Martha, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, it's always better if you have like a raw audio file and or transcript versus writer's notes. But sometimes you're working with writer's notes. If the writer has audio, that is better though. Audio or transcript. Yeah. So here are some notes that you can use to fact check. And so if I say like, okay, the 2020 census, is that what it's actually called? I might do something like this. Look up 2020 census, not 202. Oh, looks like it's called the 2020 census. And it's from sort of like an original source, right? Like the Census Bureau also calls it the 2020 census. It's not the census 2020 or anything else. It's called the 2020 census. So this we can mark as correct, and you'll see that I'm copying the link. Oh, sorry, let's see, where am I? Here we go. I'm copying the link. I'm gonna highlight this as green for like, yes, this is correct, and throwing the link in there. Some fact checkers like to put in like correct, just so it's a little bit easier to read or skim. I'm gonna zoom out a little bit so you can see what that looks like. So there's a link, and the reason why we put in the link is because we want to document our fact check, right? Like you don't want to just highlight things in green and then come back to it and be like, well, I have a question about that. Like it's just better to throw links in where you find them. April 1st. So let's go back to this link. There should be something here. I'm not going to go through this whole sentence because that's actually going to be an exercise for you all. Yeah, let's just say this is bad practice. Don't actually do what I'm doing. Let's say that it is correct. So I'm going to highlight that, highlight it green, and throw in a comment. If you're using the same link, you can say like see above, but I personally like to throw in a link just because it's easier. Okay, so let's say most Chicagoans is tricky, like you don't understand this, you don't like, it's difficult for you to verify. I usually put in like a pink or a red, something that sort of stands out, and flag that for the writer and or editor. So I would say something like can't verify, like maybe, here's a link to article that says X, link to article that says Y. So it's not the fact checker's job necessarily to say like, this is what you should change it to, unless you're like absolutely sure that that the sentence or the phrase is factually incorrect. There are more times when it's just like, you're not so sure, you're not sure how to verify it, or like it's not super clear based on third-party sources that you found. Just flag it for the writer and editor, and then sort of give them some resources to help them make that decision. So I would flag it again, like in a color that stands out, like pink or red, and just say like, hey, for the writer and editor, I can't verify this. You should take a look at it. If there is something that is straight up incorrect, again, you want to highlight that and then say incorrect. You want to make it as easy as possible for like the writer and editor, if they're skimming through your fact checks, to be like, oh, this is what I need to change. So incorrect, you know, should be something else, XXX, and then throw in your link. Again, for like documentation purposes, right? So if like the editor wants to look in closer detail at the source that you found, give that link to them. Any questions so far before I'll let you do this yourself?
So are you always commenting and never like editing directly in the document, or okay?
Yeah, that's right. So fact checkers should not be editing the document in the sense of like not changing words, not like deleting things. Everything will be through comments. It can look a little overwhelming, I will admit, especially for the editors that take a look at it once fact checking is done. But basically, like you can just resolve all of the comments where the highlighted portion is green. Or just focus on the comments where the highlighted section is not green. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
I try not to resolve any of the fact checkers' comments, just so that if I have to come back to it or the writer wants to see it or anyone else wants to take a look at the document, you know, that everything stays intact.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point, Jackie. Thanks. Okay. So for the editors, don't resolve the comments. And for the fact checkers, don't resolve your comments. Like just, it'll look messy and chaotic because of like the hundreds of comments that will be on the side, but like, that's okay. Chaos is fine. Okay. Any other questions before I send you off to work through some of this exercise yourselves?
Yeah, I have a quick question. So this is happening during the seconds, right?
Mhm.
Is it happening at the same time, or does the seconds editor wait for your fact checking? Could you, or the other way around?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And I might be wrong. So Jackie and or Martha, please jump in if I'm wrong. But it happens at the same time. And I think generally the person who does thirds waits for the fact check, but like sometimes that doesn't happen. Jackie, Martha, do you have more insight on that?
Yeah, you're correct. They both happen simultaneously. However, we try not to send anything to thirds until fact check is done and after the primary editor has compared the fact checking document to the original and what we call integration. We integrate the fact checking changes that were made, that were suggested.
Mhm. Which is why it's really important that the primary editor get the piece into as good shape as possible, because that version that the primary editor sends on to seconds and fact check, you know, if there's oftentimes, many times when edits appear in a final version of a story, it's stuff that was added at the last minute, right? So we want to make sure there are as few last minute edits as possible. There will still be things that get added after fact checked, and we want to like just kind of try to, it's impossible to make that not happen, but we want to try to control for it as much as possible. So yeah, so it'll go to seconds and fact check at the same time. Oftentimes the second editor will be done before the fact checker, so then the story just waits. It comes back from fact check, the primary editor incorporates the fact checking changes into the document and then sends it to thirds. And and that third edit should really just be a proofread, ideally.
But if there are significant additions to the second draft, as primary editor, you want to fact check those additions that were made, or if there is capacity in the fact checking team, you want to let them know that there were some additions that were made, and if someone's available, right, to fact check those changes.
Yeah. And I will say that we've done we've done that like maybe once or twice since I've been director. And because fact checking is so time intensive and you really get to know, like the fact checkers really get to know the material of the story. It's best if the same fact checker can like do like that extra fact checking if for whatever reason the story, there's like significant changes to the story, significant additions, I should say. I try to work with the fact checkers to, like let them know if I think that that's a possibility and ask them, if they're available and if they're interested and willing, like, would they be willing to do that? But yeah, it's usually not like a normal thing. Any other questions before I send you all copies of this story? No? Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. And in the chat, I'm going to assign a couple of, let's see, hold on. I have too many tabs open, as is always the case, unfortunately. Okay, so I'm gonna send folks working copies. These are going to be, it's going to be the same story that you just saw. So Lily, I'm going to give you this copy. And I will give instructions as soon as I'm done sending everyone links. Okay, so this copy, I'm gonna give it to Shima. Window. While I do this, again, if folks have like any other questions about fact checks in the meantime, while I get this set up, please feel free to shout them out. Alma, this is for you. Oops, that's not right. I hope these all are the correct links. Let's see. Maddie, this is for you. And then, oh, did we? Okay, no, Malik is still here. I just don't see, I assume. Okay. Last copy is for Malik. All right, can everyone see if their doc can open up correctly and if they are the only one in that doc? You should not be sharing your doc with anyone else. Yep, cool. Yeah, just a thumbs up on Zoom would be great.
I think me and Alma have the same doc.
Oh, okay, hold on, let me fix that. Thank you. Alma, I think I might have given you the wrong link. Let me fix that. Weird. Sorry, 1 second. Let me figure out what's going on. Oh, I see. All right, let me try sending both of you new links again. All right, so this one, Shima, and this one is Alma. Let me know if that's any better or if they're the same.
I think Alma is still in my doc.
No. What's happening? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if they're the same, but I have the census story that you were at, fact checking earlier.
Yeah. So it's all gonna be the same.
Okay.
Text.
Yeah, I don't see anybody else in there.
Okay. Cool. All right. So then I think.
Well, actually, now I do.
Oh no, that's me.
Oh, that's you. Okay. I thought
Yeah,
it was
I'm in.
you.
I'm in
Okay.
your doc just to make sure that you're in there. Okay. Cool.
All right, I'm good.
Great. So what we're going to do now, I'm gonna pull up the story again. Sorry, I'm gonna be in, I think, Lily's doc just for a hot second. Lily and let's see. Yeah, Lily and Shima, could you fact check, separately the first paragraph? Just do the best you can. I'll go over the steps one more time before we sort of break off for like 15, 20 minutes. Alma, let's see, who do I have? Alma, can you fact check the middle paragraph? And then Maddie and Malik, can you fact check separately that last paragraph? So Lily and Shima, first paragraph, Alma, second paragraph, Maddie and Malik, the last paragraph. I'm going to send you all the writer's notes so that you can use that for your fact check. Please don't edit anything in the writer's notes. Just use it as sort of a reference. Okay, here, I'm gonna put that in the chat. So here are the writer's notes. Let me know if you can't open it. Okay, I'm gonna have that open as well, so I can make sure folks have access. Okay, Google is telling me that there is an anonymous dinosaur, which I think is very endearing. Okay, so if you, for whatever reason, have trouble getting into the writer's notes, let me know. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we are going to sort of break for 20 minutes. And I will check in with folks at the 15-minute mark just to give everyone like, hey, we have a 5-minute heads up. If you cannot finish your section or your paragraph in that amount of time, please do not feel bad. Like I said, fact checking is very time intensive, and like the more you do it, the better or the faster you are at like finding resources or figuring out like where to look for information. So we're gonna do, in 20 minutes. So at 1:12, we'll regroup. So as a reminder, the steps are skim through your portion, try to get a sense of what it's about, who the main characters are. If there are interviews, know to look for those in your writer's notes. 2, highlight everything that could possibly be wrong and treat them as facts that you have to check. Remember that if you're checking a quote, you want to check that the person actually said it and that the thing that they said is true. And then finally, you want to highlight things in different colors based on whether or not you could verify them, and then add a comment to that phrase or sentence with your source and just whether it's correct or incorrect or needs clarification. Everyone good to go? Cool. All right, so at 1:13, I'm going to ask that everyone like stops in their document, but I will check in with folks at like 1:08-ish just to see how we're doing. And feel free to keep your cameras off and to stay muted. Sound good? All right. See you in a bit. All right, folks, we're gonna wrap it up in about 5 minutes. Okay, everyone, feel free to stop looking for sources, and we'll just do like a quick sort of debrief of that exercise. and then wrap it up. So something that I am interested in hearing from you all is just like, what questions did you have? Like observations, general feelings, whatever reactions are welcome.
One question I had was, so for example, if there's a fact that came from an interview, but it's not something that I could like Google or find on the website or like an article or anything, could you keep it and then just say like, according to this person? And is according to also necessary?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So that is something that I would maybe like just note in a comment. If it's not something that you can verify by any other means outside of like a transcript, I think that it's fine to like say in your comment, like, this is in the transcript. Yeah, you don't have to highlight it as like pink or anything, but maybe just write it in the comments so that at least the editor sees it. Yeah, but that's a really good question. Any other questions or like thoughts?
One of the where it said 1.2 was that billion in federal funding. When you click on that link, you have to have a subscription to look at that article. So one of the things I put it in pink, and then I was gonna like I was just like doing research trying to find that figure somewhere else that was credible, but I didn't before the time was up. But I feel like that could be like, maybe like, especially if someone's reading the online article and they click a link and they can't like look at it.
Yeah, that's actually a great segue because I almost forgot to mention this. Jason has got us a like subscriptions, like fact checkers subscription to various newsrooms, like local newsrooms that I can share. So yeah, that will come in very handy because I run up against paywalls multiple times and there are only so many times you can open an incognito window. So that is a hack, but we have subscriptions to some newsrooms and I can share that information. But yeah, sometimes that happens. And if that does happen, like fact checkers can sort of flag it as like, hey, it's behind a paywall, like I can't find it anywhere else. But that's usually a bad sign. Like if it's really just in one article that you can't get to, that's usually not great anyway. Yeah, but I will definitely send around, like I will share like the login info for fact checkers who need to like access various newsrooms stories. Yeah, good point. Anything else, like any other issues that sort of popped up or questions that folks have? I will also sort of like go over like what it looks like at sort of as an end product. So I can do that now, actually.
I have one question.
Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
For like, if someone you're interviewing like has an estimation, like just the fact that it is an estimation, I guess means that it's not like particularly a fact, but like how should an estimation be like represented within a story if it's like a part of it's like in this story, like the estimation is not like in a quote, like it's not attributed to a person. It's just like kind of stated as, so you know what I'm talking about, I think, because you know the story, but yeah, that's what I was confused about.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I feel like, yeah, part of that's like editorial and part of that is like fact checking responsibility. So on the fact checker side, fact checkers should know that like they couldn't find sort of like a third party source to sort of like verify that estimate. And if that's the case, that's like not great. So for example, if someone is quoting, you did which paragraph did you do? The third one?
Yeah, the last one.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess like the way that I would do that is to just note that like in a comment, I'd probably highlight it as pink and then say like, I'm not sure, like I can't verify this estimate. And if it's not clear in the way that like the sentence is written, that this is in fact an estimate from a specific person and not like from like a government body or whatever, and like you can't find other documents to sort of back it up, just like flag it for the editor. But yeah, fact checkers generally like don't do any editing in the document themselves or like sometimes I will make suggestions, but that's like not a fact checker's responsibility. Does that make sense? I don't know if did I answer your question?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, solid. Any other questions before I pull up what a finished, like fact check could look like? If your doc doesn't look like this, it is a-okay. But just so that you get a sense, just in terms of like highlighting what it could look like, right? So I showed you at step 2, just doing like main highlights, like everything is yellow or orange, and those are the things that you want to check. And then here's what it could look like. So most things are green, which is good. There are a couple of things that are pink, as like, I'm not sure about this. And then one thing that is like, this is wrong. So again, like, don't worry if this is not what your paragraph looked like. This is just an exercise. And generally for like new fact checkers, I try to, like, if it's your first assignment, especially, I try to sort of skim your fact check before we pass it on to the editor, just to make sure that like you feel like supported and that you feel like you have a second pair of eyes on your work. But that aside, we can wrap up. So this is my email. Please feel free to reach out whenever, if you have questions about fact checks. You will probably get a faster response on Slack, but I do check both. So let me know if you have any questions. And then sort of as like a final follow-up, I'm going to send an email to everyone on this call with more fact-checking resources. We have like this beautiful comprehensive guide to fact-checking that you can page through at your leisure, as well as some sort of like general takeaways. And I'll write up like the steps of the process in that email as well. Any sort of last questions before we end? No? I know this has been a lot, so thank you all for your energy, and hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.